Outlaw Country by Ghotty. The city was alive tonight, more so than usual. I could feel a tapestry of excitement spread across the whole city. Avon worked fast, and rumors were already to spread. Heroes from another land come here in our darkest hour. Gullible assholes, seriously, I don't understand these people's obsession with heroes. The entire culture is based on idol worship. Where's the self-respect, the individualism, based on your entire political system off of one asshole? That's just too much power, and a recipe for disaster. Like a child that never learned how to think for itself. In short, the kingdom was fucking trash. I sighed, glaring at the pile of paperwork on my desk. The kingdom was so understaffed that they have me to coordinate half of it. The public relations, logistics, and my actual job of dealing with enemies of the state, of which my dear princess just offered a room to. I glared even harder, not even taking my eyes off the pile of paper as I sipped from my teacup. It was blatantly obvious that those Taoists, what they were planning, but the princess was too desperate to deny them. She wasn't quite so naive that she didn't have her suspicions, but she opted to take a leap of faith by pure virtue of the fact that she couldn't see any alternatives. Anyone with experience would know that banking on peace is unbelievably stupid. But it would be so much easier if the Taoists were truly willing to make nice. It's hard to resist the urge to hope for the best. I sighed again. I've been doing that a lot lately. If I were my old self, I could have just mind-fucked them into oblivion and forced the peace treaty, but no, my former iron grip on the mind has turned into a gentle touch. Hell, it barely even counted as a touch, more of a glimpse. I wasn't the only one feeling the weakness, but I probably had it worse than any of those Aldemir-worshipping troglodytes. I was so much more than these walking sacks of scum. I pushed the paperwork off my desk. Papers falling to the floor in clumps, stray pieces floating lazily towards the steadily growing pile, and then left my desk clear for the files I actually cared about, my psychological profiles of our new guests. The man, Lao Ling, was unimportant. His mind was full of nothing but pride, sadism, and poor humor. Maybe I'd like him if he was half as funny as I was. But he was just a miserable old fuck. He knew the value of playing nice, though, and he was all empty platitudes. I'm not sure about his loyalty to his master, but I could tell that it was solid. But why? My best guess is that he was raised in such a way that the very idea of individuality had not occurred to him. But I needed more information to be sure. The Sikh master, Yu Lang, fits her Ice Queen stereotype perfectly. Nothing but cold pragmatism. Though she does have a sense of amusement, which serves to keep her surprisingly grounded. She will inevitably carve every pound of flesh that she can while Wolfburn is naked and exposed. The fact that she needs us for the corruption is the only reason that she is still playing nice. That, and her second newfound goal, one we both shared. I turned the last paper. Buck Jones. I liked the guy. His reactions when I messed with him in the bath were hilarious, especially since I managed to convince him that it wasn't actually a bath, that he'd just been playing it off, pretending that he wasn't embarrassed. Good times. All humor aside, the man was practically the perfect pawn, and Yu Lang and I both knew it. She doesn't have to be able to sense minds to tell that he's impulsive and driven by his emotions, of which he has plenty. Hatred, sadness, weariness. Pretty much every negative emotion I can think of swirled around in his head, eating at him with every passing second. Though most prevalent and interesting was a deep shame. If I could still read minds, I'd be able to figure out his tragic backstory, but alas, I have to do it the old-fashioned way. It's funny, the Silver Core is a nobody piece of shit, but now that I have to fight for his approval like a child trying to impress his father. Getting to his silver is no trouble, but he did it so fast. I'm sure there were plenty of people who had gone further faster, but probably not in this section. That being said, I think I found out how. Yesterday, my scouts found 2 more communities, far to the east, where Buck mentioned he came from. They sent written reports via magic. One town was small and completely barren, full of corpses and architecture from the undefinable species. The wreckage suggests an attack by a small-sized strike team, wielding significant firepower. What was more interesting was the town a day's ride away. It was much larger, and just as barren. My scout told me it was picked clean, full of skeletons and bloodstains. People were dead and gone, corpses picked to the bones by scavengers. I had sent my best scout, and he hypothesized that a single man or creature had caused it. Every skeleton had a weapon in hand, much like Buck's, similar to the small crossbows propelled by explosive powder. Most of them were facing the same direction, and the corpses went in a straight line from the entrance to the city to where the leader presumably resided in the center. Said building had, and I quote, evidence of an absolute fucking bloodbath. It was very easy to piece together what had happened. It seemed our new friend had a hell of a vengeful streak. So much, though, that he was willing to tear down an entire community. Though my scouts hadn't found any skeletons besides the people involved in the battle, they had probably evacuated. But to where? I had no idea what was further east, and my scouts were approaching the limit of transmission range. I didn't want to risk any of my skilled men, but I needed to know what was there. As there were still 2 more communities unaccounted for. The westernmost edge of the section that was only a few dozen miles from this town, it looked like a mirror, reflecting the landscape back at us, completely indestructible and impassable. I massaged my temple. Actually, the corruption might have been a community into itself, so perhaps there was only 1 more unaccounted for. Could I really afford to let it go? Wherever I dealt with it later, I was getting off track. Buck Jones was deeply emotional, which made him very easy to use, or so Yu Lang thought. She probably assumed very little of his intelligence due to his demeanor, but I think otherwise. Beyond all those emotions, I could see endless calculations, a clear sign of someone intelligent. His eyes darted around every time I saw him, taking in as much information as he could. He probably considered everything and everyone in a very, very well may have already seen through the sect master. That means trying to play games with him would probably end poorly. Men like him appreciate no-nonsense approaches. So that was exactly what I was going to try. After all, he very well may decide how this inevitable battle was going to end. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. The tea had gone cold a while ago. This much thinking was unhealthy. I'd been tracking Buck since the moment that he had left the hall, and it seems he could sleep about as much as I could. I supposed I might as well go make nice. Tomorrow, Avon was going to ask a lot of him. I thought to endear him to the prospect before the dear princess goes and fucks it all up. I stood up from my desk, stretching as I did so. Bones popped as I leaned back. I stepped over the pile of papers, airflow sending even more spiraling through the room. I could barely see the walls through all the books, folders, and paperwork. Ugh! Maybe I should have an accident involving a lit candle. I stepped out of my room, trying and failing to stop the trail of papers from whooshing around behind me, and I missed my secretary, but she was nowhere to be found after the reckoning. Similar stories played out in the vast majority of people here, but life carried on. The alternative was to be curling up into a ball and dying. and most people didn't find that all too acceptable. I wandered out of the castle, using my senses to avoid every living being in it by pure force of habit. Being rarely seen is part of my mystique, after all. If the guards actually knew me, they probably wouldn't have cowered in fear. And if they really knew me, they would have done more than cower.